Hey everybody, this is Doug Schaeffer with Remax Oceanside and Make Maine Your Home.com. In this episode of the Make Maine Your Home podcast, we're talking with Eric Schaeffer over at Schaeffer Douglas Title. If you've purchased a home before, you probably understand what a title company is. If you haven't, or if you're looking to buy your first house, title company is kind of what keeps the transaction going. They're like the glue to the transaction. They kind of handle all the money, but most importantly, they do the title search to make sure that there's no problems with the deed, and they're also help you out with title insurance, which is very important. So we're going to talk to Eric Schaeffer about all that. Let's do this. All right, guys, I made it over to see Eric Schaeffer with Schaeffer Douglas Title. That's the correct name, right?
That's our name.
Did I do that?
Yes,
okay,
we've done that right.
There's a name change. We'll get to that, but Schaeffer Douglas Title. And I'm excited to talk about title insurance and title company, what they do. They're kind of the glue to real estate transactions, so I'm kind of excited to be here. But thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in to talk to me, Doug.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
So before we dive into all the nuts and bolts, let's talk a little bit about you. So where are you from?
I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I'm a transplant. I've been here since January of 2002.
Okay.
Got my midlife crisis out of the way at 30 after practicing law in Cincinnati for 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Was at a large law firm in Cincinnati doing commercial real estate work. Lots of billable hours, lots of late hours, not much contact with the outside world.
That was the grind.
Yes, that was the grind, and first child on the way, and my wife's from New England, and she wanted to get back east, so
perfect.
I thought that sounded like a heck of an idea, and didn't really want to move to Hartford, Connecticut, where she was from. No offense to Hartford, but
I don't blame you. You're better off here. Yeah.
Much better. And so I was like, where can we go? Small city, less of a commute. I want to ski outdoors in Burlington and Portland.
Yeah.
Kind of jumped out, and my
those were the two.
Those were the two.
Yeah.
And my wife's.
Did you flip a coin? Or?
My wife's family is actually, her mother's family is from Skowhegan, so she was actually born in Maine. She was born in Waterville, only lived here for 3 months, but
nice.
That was at least the connection. It sounded better than I'm tired of Cincinnati and my job. Please hire me. I'm moving cross country. Like I say, my wife's family's out here. Right. That's the connection. So we fell in love after a trip or two, and
awesome.
Have loved it. I love Cincinnati, but not enough to ever move back there. So
that's great. I understand. So tell me a little bit about Cincinnati. What was it like growing up there?
So I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Cincinnati, the county east of downtown, so a little more rural, suburban to rural. So great area. Rolling hills is not like what people think of Midwest with the plains forever.
Right.
You get an hour north of Cincinnati, it flattens out pretty quick. But we're down kind of the Appalachian foothills, western foothills of it. So a little hilly.
So you're kind of on the edge of when you're on a plane, you're kind of looking out. And
yes, it's before everything flattens out.
It's before the flat.
Yeah, Indiana, 50 miles away, that's where it starts to flatten out on you.
Right. So does that mean you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan?
Unfortunately, yes. Long suffering. I even had season tickets to the Bengals in the mid-'90s.
Oh, you did?
In the lost decades. So my wife would wonder why we'd show up when they're like 1-13 in December. And
right. You still go.
30,000 people in a stadium that sits 55 or 60,000.
Right.
But builds character.
Right.
My wife's accused me of child abuse for raising our kids as Bengals fans.
Making them,
Like can't they be Pats fans? We live in New England. It's like, no, they can't.
It's much better. You should come over to this side.
Yeah, although I think I'm a little late for the bandwagon now. That could be changing at least sometime in the next few years.
Yeah, it'd be pretty bad time to do.
Yeah, if he ever retires. I'm not sure if he will. So,
exactly right. Well, great. Let's jump in a little bit about your business. So when I got in the business about 7 years ago, you were one of the first title companies that I worked with, and at the time it was H&D. So
correct.
Tell me how did the company start? Did you start it as soon as you got here? Was it?
No. So I kind of found my way in the title world kind of in a circular manner. So I started off in Cincinnati working at a medium-sized firm that had a title company as a subsidiary. Mm-hmm. I did some litigation, real estate, and corporate work, but I also had to oversee some of the title company for the attorney who ran that. Enjoyed it, did closings. Against my better judgment, got headhunted into that large firm doing purely commercial real estate on some large-scale merger and acquisition type stuff. And lease negotiations for buildings, and it just was not as much fun as the more retail side. Right. And when I got here, I had a job lined up with another large firm here in Portland.
Oh, you did? Okay.
They were flying me back up to meet the rest of the team for the final details, and it was a second interview to meet the rest of the team was September 15th of 01. And 9/11 hit, so I drove up for the interview.
That's an interesting time to be
The market was suddenly very different. It was very somber, and they're like, you know what?
Yes.
We've decided we're not hiring after all.
Interesting.
And by that point, I told
so they did. They just said, hey, we're
going to wait till next year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, geez, I better spread my horizons, especially since I had told my firm in Cincinnati I was leaving.
You're done. Yeah, exactly.
So all of a sudden, it's like, oh, crap, I've got a young kid. And
now, were you already scheduled to like move here? I mean,
I was
stuff in the truck and
getting ready. We had our house on the market, and we were like, whichever happens first, the job starting or the house selling, we're out the door. So suddenly, I broadened my horizons significantly.
Right.
Market was horrible.
Sure.
And ended up, somebody said, why don't you call somebody at this title company? And they hired me to do title searches and closings, which is an awesome way to learn the details of Maine law. And I was there for about 10 months, and then went into a law firm for 5 years where we had a title company component, so billable plus title company piece. And I was basically running it for them by the end of it. And our largest client wanted his own title company at that point. He was a lender and said, the work's leaving. I'd like you to come follow and run it. Which said, you know what, I don't really love the billable hours so much. This is a lot more fun.
Right.
So made the jump, and after 6 years, the lender had expanded, and a new partner said you can't have any extraneous businesses. So I bought him out 5 years ago now. Okay. And a couple years later, Douglas Title Company, which is an institution in the area that's been around for 30 years, approached me to help them retire. So I brought them into the fold 3 years ago, and that leads us now to unifying the brands under Schaeffer Douglas
to make
Title.
Schaeffer Douglas, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I got to try to change from H&D to Schaeffer Douglas.
It's going to be hard to have it for me to break.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's ingrained in our heads too.
So that sounds like it was more of a situation where you acquired that title company, the Schaeffer, or the Douglas.
So Douglas Title, I purchased their name and assets, and they've worked for another few years. So basically, it just came in under the H&D umbrella, and we also did business as Douglas Title for the last 3 years.
Right.
So.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Now you have a few locations now too.
Yeah. So we have.
Tell me about that. Yeah.
So we have an office in South Portland, Yarmouth, Auburn, and also Topsom. So we have kind of that whole 295-95 corridor covered, and whenever we have a file, if we have a file, we can travel.
Right.
We cover up to Bangor even at times. One of my attorneys.
What's the farthest you've had to go?
Me personally, it's been Blue Hill.
It's down east, right?
Yeah, that's a bit out there. It's a beautiful area. It was luckily a good day for a drive.
To get there. Yeah.
And John Kirk, who's an attorney in my office, he is from the Bangor, not from the Bangor area originally, but spent a lot of time up there. So he does a lot of driving.
Oh, he does. You send him up there.
John goes and sees the old neighborhood.
Right. So. Yeah, go stay with your folks or whatever. Yeah.
And so we try to. So with our company, we try to be very legal focused still. It's a legal transaction these days. A lot of it's going towards a marketing route. We still recognize it's a legal transaction, has a lot of important parts. So we're still legal focused. We've got 3 attorneys on staff. Okay. And then we also have a couple paralegals and a wealth of experience, including 4 abstractors on staff too, who do the title search at the Registry of Deeds. So we don't outsource that. We have people in-house who do that for us. And our most inexperienced title examiner has been doing it for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And
so there's some experience
here. The most experienced ones, 3 of them have been doing it for more than 40 years.
So that's great.
So they help keep the trains moving.
Right. So that brings up a question because I get this a lot. Who are you working for? You know what I mean? That's, like if I represent a buyer and I'm like, hey, you're gonna use Casey Hamlin or whoever, and then hey, we're gonna get you over to Schaeffer Douglas, and they're always like, so are they my attorney? And not necessarily, right? I mean,
correct. So we essentially, even though we're not a law firm, we're a title company. We essentially act as the attorney for the bank in the transaction. Now that being said, the interests of the buyer dovetail pretty well with the lender's interests. So even though we don't represent them directly, what the bank wants us to
Kind
do.
of one and the same.
The bank wants us to search the title, make sure there are no problems, and that when the buyer signs the mortgage, that they're going to have a first priority mortgage on the property, so that if they need to get paid, they can take the property back, and that they know they're first in line. Well, in order for the bank to be first in line, that means the buyer needs to be first in line for owning the property and not having any other claims against it from an old lien or an outstanding interest from a prior owner, which you would think that people wouldn't leave loose ends like that, but it's shocking how badly sometimes people mess up real estate transactions.
I don't know if every other state is like Maine, but it's like finding property lines and all that kind of stuff, and title issues just seem to be a lot here.
Maine's worse than most.
Is it? Okay.
And after having practiced law in Ohio, and the military surveyors made it out to Ohio. So everything is in a 1 mile by 1 mile grid that expands out to 10 mile by 10 mile grids.
Gotcha.
When you search the title out there, you can search it down to a 1 mile radius.
Right.
So if you're running the name John Smith, you're running it in that small area, not trying to see what John Smith did in Cumberland County, Maine, which can turn up a whole bunch of entries that have nothing to do with what you're looking for.
Yeah, sure.
Or if it's Bank of America, searching Bank of America for all of Cumberland County, more problematic.
There's a lot.
And so out there, titles are a lot easier to search. Surveys are a heck of a lot easier. I got a boundary survey at my house in Cincinnati for $300.
Oh, wow.
And I moved here to Maine.
They're all squares.
They tie into the areas very easily.
Yeah.
I wanted one here in Maine when I moved here, and they said, you don't want a survey. It's going to cost you $2,000-3,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, well, it's a quarter-acre lot.
It's that rock wall to the pine tree over there.
Meandering in a generally easterly direction. So, so here it's a little bit, everybody started slicing and dicing in 1600 and something, and very often they figured, who needs an attorney, who needs a surveyor? It's family, we can just do it amongst ourselves. Well, that leaves a lot to be desired as time goes on. So
okay. So as far as like you're technically working for the bank in most transactions. What I also get a lot is people that are like moving to Maine, from out of state, which is a lot. A lot of people come here. It's so different in other states. Like Massachusetts is a good example, because down there everybody has an attorney. For the transaction.
It's an attorney full employment state. Everybody's got a lawyer up on that.
Everybody's got a lawyer up, and it's from what I understand, it's a lot of buyer beware too. So it's a lot different up here, as we know. And I think sometimes they always think like you're going to be their attorney. Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, and we try to make sure people understand. I mean, we give advice as much as we can, and we just make it with the caveat that we're not representing you directly. Although if it's a cash purchase, in those cases we actually are representing the buyer.
Right.
And so we really are their attorney and looking out for their interests. But even though a buyer's not technically our client and the realtor's not technically our client, we consider them a subset of our clients, and we're looking out for their interests.
Right, and you do a lot to guide us and help us through the transaction, all that stuff. So let's talk a little bit about the process, the real estate transaction, and I think this will be interesting for people to hear.
Interesting might be a strong word.
Right. Well, we'll try to make it interesting. So a deal gets signed. I get it signed, and all of a sudden you guys get notified that it's there. Like, walk me through, like, how does a typical transaction go? Like, what's the first things you do? What's kind of like your step by step?
So once we get the contract,
this might take a week to tell me. We'll see.
Once we get the contract from the realtor and the official order from the lender, if there's a lender, basically we open the file in our system. We assign an abstractor who's going to go search the title and find out what actually is of record in the registry. You have to trace the deeds back in history, find all the mortgages that were against it, make sure old ones are discharged, any tax liens are discharged, what easements there are of record. So if there's one to Central Maine Power to get you power, that's obviously a good easement. Portland Water District, if there's a right-of-way because you're on a private road, covenants.
You're checking all that.
We're pulling all that together, and then it's reviewed by one of the attorneys, who then puts it in the form of a title commitment that basically says, here's what the title looks like. And the title insurance, the lender makes you buy it for them. It's up to the owner whether they buy an owner's policy in a lender transaction. It's something we highly recommend. But what it does is it basically says that if your title is other than is stated in the policy. It'll pay your legal fees and any loss you suffer for any of the covered claims. So it's really it's the legal fees that are the big kicker, because even if you have
that's the most expensive
right
part. Yeah.
The crazy neighbor syndrome is a big one. If your neighbor suddenly thinks they've got a right to go across your yard, they've been using it for ages, they say. We had this happen multiple times where people have had neighbors call the cops saying they're trespassing. We want you to arrest them. The police come out and they'll say, this is a civil matter. You guys need to work it out amongst yourselves.
Sure.
And then they're in court. And the neighbor may be crazy, but you're spending legal fees to fight the neighbor and win. So that's where the title insurance comes in. So that's why the bank gets us involved. They want to make sure the title looks good and that they're insured so that if something goes wrong, they've got their legal fees covered to fight the claim and any loss at that point. So
now, since you brought up title insurance, let's touch on that for a little bit, because the obvious big question is, why do I need title insurance if my lender has title insurance? And I'll let you kind of explain what those differences are.
All right. So like most insurance, you're most likely never going to use it. It's just if you do use it, you're going to use the heck out of it. The statistical claims rate is somewhere in the 7 to 10% range. So, it's 90% chance you won't use it, but you're either in the 100% you will or 100% you won't. We just don't know which one you are.
Right.
And it's not always the catastrophic claims. Like the big ones are forged deeds, which, believe it or not, does happen.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
One of our underwriters paid out $80-some thousand to a wife who was then ex-wife for a property in Bethel, Maine, up near Sunday River.
Oh my goodness.
The husband and his wife signed a deed to the new owners. It wasn't actually the wife who signed the deed. It was apparently a girlfriend or something.
Yeah.
And the wife came out of the woodwork, and in order to get her to sign a quitclaim deed to clear title,
it was $80,000.
It was $80,000
the number.
So that was a quick payoff, unfortunately, on that policy.
And that was a title insurance claim.
And that was a title insurance claim.
Yeah, sure.
And so, the lender's policy only covers the lender, and they're going to get out of a potential lawsuit fairly quickly. So what'll often happen is the fight's really between neighbors or somebody over easement rights or use of a private road. They may sue the lender just because they've got a lien on the property.
Right.
The lender is going to file an answer through the title insurance saying, we're basically not really involved. You guys fight it out and get back to us.
Right.
And then they'll tell the owner, well, you can get your own attorney if you want to fight this, but we're kind of on the sidelines. Or they may give a nuisance settlement to them for $1,000 just to get them out of the transaction, leave them alone.
Okay. Right.
And then you're on your own. So that's where
Gotcha.
the owner's policy comes in and protects you. And
you out. Yeah, gotcha.
And the other big thing is if it was truly one of those catastrophic claims, the forged deed, where you don't really own the property. What would happen in that case?
Could you imagine?
It's it doesn't happen often, but it, believe it or not, does. So in that case, worst case scenario, you don't own the property any longer. You still owe that mortgage. The lender's title insurance is not going to pay off that mortgage unless you default. And the lender comes in and says, basically, you need to take us out. And this is where it gets all legalese and technical, but there's subrogation rights. So what would happen is the title insurance company would basically take the place of your bank. So you still owe them money.
Right.
The mortgage doesn't really go away. The debt doesn't go away. You just don't have the property, and you owe.
And you owe all this money.
The money.
And you don't have
people.
the property. Oh,
correct.
Wow.
And so that's where the difference is. The owners covers you directly. The lender, and also they know they're going to be gone typically in 6, 7, 8 years. People are going to refinance or move. So it's a short-term kind of policy. The owners last forever. So even if you sell the property.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that, yeah.
If you sell the property and the new owner gets sued by the neighbor over some dispute on the property, you're probably getting a phone call from your new owner saying, hey, you sold me this property. And
what the heck?
You had signed a warranty deed that says everything's good, and that gives me the right to sue you. If they sue you, your title insurance still covers you even after you've sold the property.
Right, okay, gotcha. Yeah, it stays with you.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the lenders is a short-term
Yeah,
policy.
once the loan is paid off, the policy disappears.
It goes away. Oh, interesting.
Which is why the owner's policy is more expensive.
Right.
Because it has a higher risk for the insurer.
Sure.
So the odds of a claim coming up in the 7 years that the loan exists is a lot smaller than however long you live.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, speaking of expense, is there a set rate for what title insurance goes?
There is. It's what's called a filed rate in the state of Maine. So it's regulated. So the underwriters have to tell the state, here's how much we charge for title insurance for a lender's policy and an owner's policy, and it's a certain dollar per thousand. So it's roughly, and each one varies a little bit, but as you can imagine, for competitive reasons, the various underwriters end up pretty close on
Most
the
of
dollar
time.
amounts.
Yeah, sure.
But it's roughly $3.25 per thousand for an owner's policy,
Okay.
and $1.75 to $2 a thousand for the lender's policy.
Okay.
And you get credit for the lender's policy when you buy both at the same time. So
Oh, you do? Okay.
so if
Yeah.
the owner's policy would be $1,000 just looking at it by itself, and the lender's policy is $600, you don't pay $1,600. You pay $600 for the lenders and $400 more for the owners.
Oh, okay.
So they give you the
you're
credit for
able
the
to-
$600.
yeah.
So
Okay, so you're able to put it all together. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Well, that's cool. Going back a little bit to the process, like you were talking about, you bring in an abstractor, I think you call it.
we call it abstractor or title examiner. So
Sure. Okay. So does that, like, just thinking from a timing, does that happen right away? File
It
comes
does.
in, it's like, hey, we got to get
within
rolling.
24 hours, we get that to the title
And
abstractor.
they're rolling. They're
rolling.
They're doing something.
Yeah, and then
So-
the person who opens the file is immediately checking with the town to get the tax map and lot information, real estate tax information,
Right.
sending
They're-
out letters.
They're starting all those
Yes,
calls.
sending out
Yeah.
letters or emails to the buyer, the seller, the brokers, saying, what
Right.
are your contact information? On the seller side, who do you have a mortgage with? The account number,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. Authorization for them to talk to us, the bank to talk to us.
Right.
And we start gathering the information at that point.
All that stuff. Now, does the abstractor and the title examiner, do they ever have to go to the registry of deeds, or is it mostly like nowadays? Is it kind of like they're able to stay at their computer?
Most of them can stay at their computer. Ours, as I mentioned, are very experienced and they still like to go to the registry.
Right.
Not all of them. So one of our
It's kind of like
abstractors in
a fun
particular,
trip.
yeah. And it
Yeah.
used to be more fun when I moved here in '02.
Yeah.
It was standing room only at the registry. It was packed,
that's
full of
fine.
people.
Yeah.
There's only usually 2 or 3 people at the registry in Cumberland County each day.
Yeah.
One of them's ours.
yeah.
Our abstractor, she still loves to go
Just
to the
likes-
registry.
yeah,
She
yeah.
likes to be there.
Get a cup of coffee, hang out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
another one here in the South Portland office, he prefers to be at his desk
Yeah.
at the computer doing it via the internet. So,
Yeah, that's fine.
Same result,
Right.
just different
way,
approach.
Different
Yeah.
way of doing it. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So I guess the final thing that at least I'll bring up is title companies. You guys, you're like the money guys too.
Correct.
I mean, this is like where everything goes. Like, because especially first time home buyers, like, well, who do I write a check out to, and all
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're the clearinghouse
Right.
basically for all of it. So Maine is a round table closing state. So everybody typically shows up at the table. All the documents are there for people to sign. The bank sends their money to us. The buyer sends their money to us, or brings the money to us. And then after everything's signed, we review to make sure everything's been done properly, and record the deed, the mortgage, and distribute the money. So the seller gets money from us. We send either by wire, FedEx, the payoff to the banks, and act as the clearinghouse for
Right.
everything.
Yeah. So you're bringing everything's coming in. You're distributing it. All that kind of stuff. What kind of there's got to be a ton of regulations on that. I mean, is this that like I'm instantly thinking like, gee, somebody can rip off a lot of people here. I know you guys wouldn't.
It's and it's highly regulated, and even more so after the implosion after 2008. We are overseen by a whole host of various people, and it was always regulated, but now they really regulate the heck out of it.
Right.
And it's a matter of you really need folks who know what they're doing, because it's easy for things to go wrong. It's usually the largest asset anybody's purchasing.
Sure.
And not everybody takes the same care on the industry.
Right.
So.
Now, how just things are coming to me now. Like money comes to you. I'm assuming that they're trust accounts. Like you can't mingle your funds, similar to like how we have to operate as a real estate brokerage. Like so if your company is not doing well, there's. I mean, I know there's by law you can't raid those funds, but is it? Yeah.
There have been some even in Maine about 10 years or so ago.
Yeah.
The good thing is there's kind of a check on that because every dollar going into the account is earmarked to go out for something else. It's either going to a seller or a bank, a realtor, and very quickly if somebody starts dipping in, it usually starts showing up as a bounce check because there's, in theory, no such thing as a bounce check on a trust account.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And our regulators will sweep in pretty quick when they get a call like that.
That something weird's going on.
Yeah, the folks who I was thinking of back in, I think it was 06, 07, within the space of a couple days, the title underwriter was in and took over within 48 hours. And that's actually the good thing for the consumer. As heavily regulated as we are in the title insurance piece, so we basically act as the agent for these large underwriters. There's a handful: First American, Chicago Title Insurance, Old Republic, Caddick. These are large companies with reserves. We do the title search. We issue the policy on their behalf. It's almost like we're the Allstate agent,
for title insurance.
For title insurance. And so they backstop everything we do, and they have something called a closing protection letter that they issue to the lenders, saying basically these people are working on our behalf as an agent. If anything goes wrong with the closing process, we're here to backstop it. So at least when you do have those bad actors in the industry, the First American, the Chicago, they're stepping in to make folks whole when if that happens. Goes wrong.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I haven't heard a lot about it lately, but I'm assuming that is happening.
We've luckily the upside to the whole implosion was it purged the industry of a lot of people who needed to find their life's work elsewhere. They were loan officers, realtors, and title company folks who had no business being in the industry. But when everything was just rocking and rolling in the 2000s, they could get away with a lot. When things went south, they were exposed pretty quickly.
They were, and got rid of them. All right. So, I guess now one final thing that I keep thinking of more. The day of closing, the fun. You come in here.
Yes, that's the reward for all the other stuff.
The day of closing, like when we're walking here to close, everything should be ready. Like it's done, right? I mean, obviously, I think we can both tell some stories that might be funny that we've walked in and then left with.
We've had things blow up at the closing table before, parties not getting along, and But
let's say like an average closing, because I think a lot of people out there think like, geez, I've heard closings. You could sit there for 4 hours. I've never had one like that. I mean, on average, it seems like a half an hour. Most
purchase. I mean, I tend to be more informal in my approach. I can put my serious lawyerly game face on when I need to, and you can usually tell within 30 seconds if your buyers really want the serious kind of process.
If you need that,
but as I kind of joke with folks early on to kind of get their permission to say, I'm going to go through the settlement statement line by line, show you where all the money's going. Just if you have any questions, just let me know. I can launch into all kinds of fun and not very interesting details. But they tend to start with the short version, and after several thousand or 10,000 of these, I've got a pretty good short version to summarize the documents that really tells you what it is. But the fact of the matter is that there's really only 4 documents in a purchase that we really need to make the deal go. Now you're going to sign 3 dozen or better documents, but only 4 are really important.
Isn't that something?
And that's every time.
The rest of it's like CYA stuff. Isn't it?
Every time my litigation brethren sue somebody or some bureaucrat has a new idea, we get more paper to the pile.
Yeah, sure.
So it's all you really need is the settlement statement to show where the money's going. The promissory note where you promise to pay the bank the money, the mortgage where you say you can take my house if I don't pay you, and the deed that transfers the property to you, and everything else is really extra. And that's where with nervous buyers, first-time buyers especially, can be, it's a big transaction. They probably never owed this much money in their life. It makes people nervous, but really as long as the numbers on the settlement statement are what they expect. It's the right purchase price, the right loan amount and fees, and then the interest rate is correct, and the loan amount and the term of the loan. The rest is all
just
filler.
Just stuff. Yeah.
It's just extra bells and whistles.
And I've noticed nowadays, I mean, the lion's share, especially the important stuff, they've seen like before they've even come in here. So usually, like more times than not, somebody sits down and like you start going through the settlement statement, and everybody's like, "Oh, I've seen that already." So then it's just
about half the documents the borrowers have to sign with the loan officer sometime during the application process, and they get to do it again at the closing. The loan application that shows their financial
which they've already seen and done,
and probably have signed 2 or 3 times. There's even a form that most banks have these days that tell you if you don't pay the mortgage, it hurts your credit score. Which means enough people were surprised that they tell you now, which is kind of scary. But somehow somebody didn't get that memo.
They didn't get that memo, and that's why it's there. That's funny. So I mean, that kind of covers the day of closing. I mean, anything else that we missed? I think we covered just about everything.
I think we covered quite a bit. I mean, it's the closing, like we said, it's the reward. I mean, it's all the hard work that everybody does when, the broker's going from house to house, then negotiating the deal, getting an appraiser out, us doing the title, it's the culmination of several months.
Like everything. And then
it's kind of almost an anticlimax. It's only 30, 40 minutes. And people often be surprised to be like, wow, that was easier than I expected. So
everybody's always looking around like that's it. I own the house, and it's like it seems like confetti should fall, and like
and that's where it's the nicer side. That's why I like this side better than what I did before. People usually are pretty happy to be buying a house, and it's kind of a fun thing. Everybody's there. You're putting a deal together. Now, when it goes wrong, it's memorable too. As you said, we could probably tell horror stories on that. But most of the transactions are very happy and go very smoothly. And so
most of them,
which is why the ones that don't are memorable.
Do you have any one that you can think of off the top of your head that was just like, obviously we don't want any names or anything, but
the
minor details of something fun that happened?
Details. We had there was one, this poor young kid, whose first purchase. And it was back when the market had totally tanked. It was a short sale for the sellers, which means that they owed more money on their mortgage
than what it was worth.
It was worth. And so, say they owed $180,000, but it was selling for $160,000. The bank is letting the extra money go. But they weren't walking away with any money. And the contract called for no proration of the oil. And there was oil in the tank, and the husband seller was very angry that he wasn't going to get the money for the oil. The poor wife was sitting there kind of sobbing about not having the house anymore. And this guy was all ticked about it, and he starts screaming at this poor 25, 26-year-old buyer across the street, who do you think you are doing this and everything else? And everybody's trying to diffuse the situation just as we're about ready to say, to the sellers, why don't we move you to another room? We'll do this separately. The poor loan officer walks in with a big smile on his face. He's like, hey, everybody, how's it going so far? And quickly
walks into that.
It's like, oh, something's very wrong. So that's why, I even had somebody come across the table on somebody at another one. It was a builder, new construction. The buyers wanted to move in before the closing, and he told them no, which from a legal standpoint, you really don't want people in early. Well, they decided to move in early anyway. And the builder was not happy. He wasn't being overly harsh about it, but he was basically yelling. He wasn't yelling, but he was scolding the buyer. It was just the wife who was buying the house. Her husband wasn't on title, but he's like, look, you weren't supposed to do that. You're lucky I'm not pushing this issue. And the husband took offense that he was not being nice to his wife and stood up and started saying, who the heck do you think you are? And started poking his finger in his face, and then tried to come over the table at him. And that was another one we had to finish up in separate rooms.
So do you have like a referee shirt underneath there?
Occasionally. I always say we're unlicensed crisis counselors. I've had to do shuttle diplomacy. We had a ex-husband who was supposed to be at the closing and just didn't show up. And found out that he was at work still and just didn't feel like leaving. And it was 5-6 miles from our office. And I'm like, look, everybody, just hold tight. I'll run over and we can try to do it. So I went to his place of business and hunted him down and said, you know,
you get
look,
sign
can
this.
you just sign? And so I signed with him there. So
that's funny.
So you have to think outside the box sometimes to get things to the closing. So
that's funny. These stories are priceless, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, good, man. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Great to see you, Doug, as always.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah.
So
this is Eric Schaeffer with Schaeffer Douglas Title. You can tell he's a great guy. The service with his company is awesome. And this was a ton of great information, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
You make our lives easier too. We were talking before. You know, we love all of our clients, but some make our lives easier, and Doug's definitely one who does. So
we try, man. Thanks,
Thank
bud.
you.
Well, hey guys, thanks, and we'll see you next time.